welcome back everybody. This is Acts Part 2, Lesson 4, the first video. So make certain you go back and read the 18th chapter. We're going to look at the first 17 verses right here. So what we see is that Paul has gone now from Athens to Corinth. Remember what happened in Athens? He'd gone to the Areopagus and he had waxed eloquent. Paul was a brilliant man. He was well trained. There was some fruit from that. Some people believe, but you can tell from the way that Paul writes later and the way that he acts that he was not pleased with the fruit that had been received from there as far as just the amount. And so he comes to Corinth. Well, what is the nature of Corinth? Well, it can be summed up in sin, sin, sin. Corinth is definitely a sailor's port. It was the center and a hub of commerce, particularly from shipping. And so there was a place right there where they would port from one little narrow side of the isthmus to another. So they would unload ships in one place, move it about the stuff about 3-4 miles, and load it on another ship. It saved them 200 miles of very treacherous sailing to be able to do that. And so because it was a port city, because you had all sorts of people coming, it was quite a place of sin. And actually the word to say that someone acted like or to be like a Corinthian was really quite a detrimental term. The ladies of the night were referred to as Corinthian girls, that type of thing. And so it was an entirely different city than Athens. One commentator actually said this, that going from Athens to Corinth would be sort of like, and Athens was a place of learning and university, that type of thing, wisdom and knowledge. It would be like going from Boston to Las Vegas in our understanding. I thought, well, that's useful. So they're in Corinth. Paul met Aquila and Priscilla, and they shared a trade. And it says tent makers. They were leather workers is what they worked with, tents, anything. And Aquila and Priscilla had left Italy because all the Jews had been told to leave Rome because of the command of Claudius. Now, it doesn't say in this passage that Aquila and Priscilla were believers this time. We know they become believers because we see what they do, but we simply don't know when they became believers. We don't know if Paul started working with them, and because of his testimony they did. So we don't know. But we do know that Paul reasoned in the synagogue, as was his habit, on the Sabbath day. When Silas and Timothy arrived where he was in Corinth, Paul gave his full attention to the word. Well, Jews started to oppose him within the synagogue over a period of time. And when they did, he said, I'm going to move next door. So he moves next door to Crispus' house. And even the synagogue leader believed. You see the power of God moving. Well, in the midst of all this, the Lord appears to Paul in a night vision. And he tells him, Paul, you stay here in this city. I've got many people in this city. Don't fear. There's no harm going to come your way. And you think, well, why would he? Well, when he writes back to Corinth a while later, he tells him, you know that I came to you in weakness and in fear and in trembling. What was the weakness and fear and trembling in relation to? Could have been because of the nature of the city itself. He was alone at that time. Also, it could have been because of what he was called to do day in and day out. When you see, and we'll see this later on in Acts, the things that Paul encountered, how they nearly died several times, how he was bobbing about on the ocean, that type of thing. He realized that there's no way that he could come. And he said, when I came to you, I determined to speak only the word of Jesus Christ crucified. In other words, I'm not going to do what I did in Athens. I'm not going to get twice too smart. I'm just going to come and I'm going to testify of him crucified. And he said, I came to you in that way in demonstrations of spirit and power. And so I found this sort of interesting. He has this vision. He says, don't fear. God says, don't fear. No harm's going to come your way. The very next thing that happens is that Paul's brought before a proconsul. He's brought before the leadership because the Jews were furious and they want to bring him before the political leadership. This is what the Jews would do. When they could not argue from the word, when they couldn't deal with it with their laws and their regulation and the scripture, then they would haul Paul, and you see it in several cities like this in his entourage, before the political folks and say, well, he's speaking against Roman law. Well, Gallio interrupted before Paul even said anything. And he says, this has to do with your laws. This has to do with this. I'm refusing to hear it because it has nothing to do with this. I'm unwilling to judge. And this guy, according to history, really, really was a compassionate guy. Was a compassionate proconsul. He says, this is outside my power. Well, the Jews were so furious about this that he refused to hear, that they turned around and started beating up their leader, Sosthenes, because of their embarrassment, because of what happened here. May we not do what they did, okay? Keep pressing on. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.